All right. So I'm going to get started because we have a really fascinating group of people here with us today. This is being sponsored by Google for Education, along with CAPD Voice. We thank them for making this informational session possible. So I'm going to start with just kind of framing the program. And 2020 was difficult. We're now in 2021. I was just on a call with through the University of Pennsylvania, 70 superintendents, and they feel they're feeling the pain of their teachers, of their students, of their parents. And so this whole issue about how to deal with reading gains, foundational reading skills is one of the critical issues that our schools are facing. And so this presentation is really geared to talking about how we're going to assess, accommodate, and accelerate reading. We have three experts with us today. Dr. Tenaha O'Reilly. He is the managing principal research scientist at ETS. We've all taken ETS tests over the years, so we welcome him. We're going to have Dr. Yevgen Borodin. He is the CEO at CAPD and a research professor at the State University of New York at SUNY Stony Brook. His area of specialty is innovation in accessible reading and learning. And then we have Dr. Margaret Troyer. She is the project director for the Building Capacity for Adolescent Struggling Readers at the nonprofit, the SERP Institute. Dr. O'Reilly will talk about reading science and foundational skills. Dr. Borodin is going to talk about assessing, accommodate, and accelerating foundational reading skills. And Dr. Troyer will present the STARI reading intervention for grades 6 through 9th. So let's turn the program over to Dr. O'Reilly, who's going to tell us about the science of reading and the skills you just mentioned and why maybe you should be focusing on them or others.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tenaha O'Reilly. I'm a managing research scientist at Educational Testing Service, where I lead a group called the ELA Learning and Assessment Center. The title of the talk today is My Kids Can't Read. Now, what can I do about it? I'm going to talk about three things today. Reading, is it really more than just ELA skills? Talk a little bit also about the science of reading. Why does it matter? Read Basics is an offering that we have, and how can it help? So when we talk about reading, we often think about English language arts classes. However, reading is more important than just in English language arts classes. It's important for science content, studying in English language arts, science, and history. Higher reading ability is associated with a lot of things beyond what you see in school. It's associated with higher educational attainment, greater participation in the workforce, higher wage earnings. So the ability to read is more important, not just in ELA classes or the content areas, but also life and beyond on the positive side. And then there's the negative side. The ability to read is also associated with other life outcomes, things like higher dropouts, poor health, incarceration, and even suicide attempts. While these relationships might not be causal, there are associations. But the key point to really take home here is that reading is more than just English language arts. It's associated with content area learning and lifelong learning and your life outcomes. We know that reading is very important. Unfortunately, reading ability is often an issue for students in our country. National and international assessments suggest that many students can't read at a sufficient level. Only about 35% of fourth graders and about 34% of eighth graders were classified as proficient readers in the NAEP. And now we're in a different sort of time frame. We have the COVID, and we're actually seeing massive learning loss with the COVID and the distance learning that we have. So we know there's a problem, but how do we actually fix it? And that's what we're going to talk about here today. First, we need to understand, what reading is. And in order to fix a problem, we need to know the causes. There are many possible issues here with reading. Can a student recognize words, for example? Are they able to decode unfamiliar words? Do they have sufficient vocabulary? Can a student read efficiently? The important point here is that the type of intervention really depends upon the type of problem. So in order to basically solve this problem, you need to know what the causes are. What we see here is a graphic that's useful in illustrating reading as a skill. So you can imagine here that there's strands, and these different strands intertwine together to sort of result in what we call skilled reading over time. And there's essentially two parts to this. On the top, there's language comprehension, which is often increasingly strategic. You have to think about these things in order to read successfully. In the bottom, there's the things that need to become automatic, like a skill such as driving a car, things like phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. So you essentially, if you were going to drive a car in a manual transmission, for example, at first you have to think about what gear to be in, how to depress the clutch, things like that. They take up a lot of your effort to drive the car, and you really need to be able to pay attention to the road. So over time, these things have to become automatic so you can pay attention to the more important higher level things. And that's the same thing with reading. And it's a skill, and it takes time and practice to actually do that. And that's what this rope diagram from Hollis Scarborough actually demonstrates. In the context right now in the news, there's a thing called the science of reading. And it's essentially alerting folks the fact there's been decades and decades of research on how students read. We know how students read. In the past slide, we've seen some of the components of reading. Now in the news, there's been a lot of buzz about this science of reading movement. And recently it culminated in 2020 with a CCSSO meeting and a report in 2021 called A Nation of Readers. So that basically what's going on here is that there's a recognition of the science of reading. And we know how people read, and we know how to actually improve upon that. And with this new sort of initiative, there's actually going to be a lot of sort of consequence in terms of state policy. So assessment, curriculum, teaching really should be consistent with this science of reading movement. Now, talking a little bit about what we have here today, our offering called Read Basics. It is certainly based on over a decade of research. It's consistent with this new science of reading. So when you're about to select an actual assessment, you have to ensure that it's consistent with this movement and the new policies, and this Read Basics actually is. There are 6 subtests in this assessment on foundational reading skills. There's decoding and word recognition, there's vocabulary, morphology, sentence processing, reading efficiency, and basic reading comprehension. Read Basics has many different functions that are useful. So it can be a screener. Essentially, we want to know what students and who students are at actually risk, level of risk. Once we know the students who are potentially at risk, we also need to know why they're at risk. And that's the diagnosis piece, to identify student strengths and weaknesses. Some of the strengths of the actual assessment is that it has a vertical scale, which allows us to compare students over time, like growth. Do they change over time and improve? It can also measure the effect of an intervention. And later you'll find out that our actual assessment is consistent and can be moved with intervention. The assessment has excellent psychometric properties, and it's based on a large data set that's collected across students across the entire country. What's unique about Read Basics? Well, to put it into context, foundational reading skills are not in the standards after grade 5. So if they're not in the standards, these things are probably not assessed. Therefore, if somebody has a problem in these areas, they may go unaddressed or misdiagnosed. So if a student gets a comprehension test after grade 5 and they score low, one of the inferences is that it must be a comprehension problem. Well, it turns out that that might not be the case, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Read Basics was designed to measure foundational reading skills in upper elementary, middle school, and beyond. And it's modular in that you can administer all or some of the subtests. What is really sort of unique is that you can measure these foundational skills after a period which these skills are not typically measured. Why does this matter? We published a study as an example to talk about why it matters. So one of the subtests that we have is decoding. We also have a comprehension test. So if we look at the student performance on this decoding subtest, and if we basically see if they score below a certain number, we call it a threshold, what we find is that students are very, very unlikely to score high on the comprehension. It's as if the decoding is a barrier or a threshold to comprehension. To sort of make matters a bit more worse in this case, we also looked at students over time in a longitudinal study and tracked them. And what we found is that students who scored low on this decoding measure, below the threshold, actually did not improve over time. So essentially, if you fall below the threshold, you likely won't comprehend well in the near future, or as time sort of passes on longitudinally. If you leave the problem unaddressed, the problem won't fix itself. So you need to have the ability to detect the problem, identify who's at risk, and also be able to identify why they're at risk. And here's a study that sort of shows the significant comprehension issue. Our research has shown that a significant number of students may have foundational weaknesses after grade 5. And this is something that needs to be addressed so that students aren't misdiagnosed. Quick summary. We need to ensure students get the help that they need. Read Basics is a useful tool to help diagnose reading difficulties. It's consistent with this new science of reading movement, which will affect policy. It's sensitive to intervention, and our partners at SERP, what they essentially found is that by training in their STARI program, intervention, they basically can get movement on the Read Basics measure. They can get improvement. So these skills are not just important to identify who has a problem, why they have a problem, but also they can be fixed with a proper intervention. So you have the whole package here. And also, the assessment can be used to measure student growth and change over time. Just like I have a quick acknowledgements to my team, and leave you this one quote by Frederick Douglass. Once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. Thank you.
Okay, well, Dr. O'Reilly, we're going to thank you very much for sharing that information. We are going to thank you and move to the next speaker, Dr. Yevgen Borodin, who has spent much of his professional career building accessible tools and focusing on accessible reading tools.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
Right, so ETS Read Basics is now available as part of CAPTI, and CAPTI is a research-based literacy solution that helps districts assess, accommodate, and accelerate reading. It's been built with support from NSF, Department of Education, and works on new devices, including Chromebooks. Use it remotely, synchronously, asynchronously, in person, and we integrate with many different tools that you're using. The bottom line is that we make implementation and continuity simple and seamless. So CAPTI is comprised of 3 different products. The first one is CAPTI SS, which includes the ETS Read Basics. What gets measured gets improved, and CAPTI SS helps you understand the areas of need, find out which foundational skills your students need help with, and that in turn helps you focus your existing intervention on the specific skills and then monitor effectiveness of those interventions. And what's really cool is that you can choose which skills you want to assess, and you can test the entire class on just one foundational skill in 10 minutes or less. Once you know where students stand, those reading significantly below their grade level will need accommodations and scaffolding. to keep up with their classes. And CAPTI Accommodate is this all-in-one assistive technology product that helps you address IP compliance, but providing required accommodations to help students read and write. You can compare it to both Read and Write on Kurzweil, and it has so many tools that we can do the entire webinar just on CAPTI Accommodate. And finally, although using CAPTI as an accommodation tool has been shown to improve student reading by 2 to 3 grade levels in just 1 year of use, we're adding an intervention component that will help you boost those foundational reading skills with the help of time-tested exercises. And you'll be able to align your intervention and curriculum, which is important with, for middle and high school, or give students to read something that they enjoy reading and have exercises for that automatically created. And if using CAPTI Assess, you'll be able to pilot CAPTI Advanced as soon as it's available for a whole year at no cost. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just to show you how easy it is to use CAPTI and assess those foundational reading skills. So CAPTI makes any web pages accessible. You can listen to the page read to you with text-to-speech, turn on visual accommodations, modifications, work with any documents, create assignments, and so on. But let's get directly to assessments. This is how easy it is to administer an assessment. You go to your assignments, create an assessment, give it a name, select the grade your students are in, and then select the skills. It tells you how long it takes to assess each skill. If we just do one, it'll take you under 8 minutes. Keep it short. Don't overtest students. You can do 1 or 2 of these per day. Assess only the skills you're unsure about. And you can periodically reassess specific skills, especially if you're doing intensive instruction on those skills. You can do it personalized or select the difficulty level, select the students, specific students, or all of the students in your class. And then you can schedule the assessment or just launch it when you're ready. And as soon as you launch it, students will be able to take it remotely or in person, synchronously or asynchronously. And you can share this to a Google Classroom or do this entire thing without ever leaving your Schoology or Canvas accounts because we're fully integrated with them. And once you're done, you can go to your reports where you can access the grade level, the percentile, the tier recommendations, RTI tiers, the raw scores, and the overall performance of your students showing the profile. You can also drill in to see how each of your students performed, understand what it means for them to be at the level they're at. And also you can print this for your IES class or parents and access recommendations of different activities that you can do to help improve the specific skills.
Okay. So again, as an introduction, this is Dr. Margaret Troyer from the nonprofit SERP Institute. She's going to share with us the STARI reading intervention. Thank you.
Okay, so we assess our students a lot in this day and age. And I think one important thing not to lose sight of is what do we do with the data once we have it? You know, we assess their comprehension and decoding and fluency because we want to improve them, not just because we want to know what they're like. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategic adolescent reading intervention. Why is my slide not advancing?
I think it's not advancing because of the gnomes that are in the system.
Yes.
that kicked poor Dr. Borodin off.
Okay, there we go. Okay, we're not having a snowstorm here, so I can't blame it on that. So STARI is the Strategic Adolescent Reading Intervention. It's a reading intervention designed for 6th through 9th graders who are reading 2 or more years below grade level. It is an open education resource. You can download it free of charge if you go to our website, serpinstitute.org/STARI. And in the year 2013-14 school year, SERP partnered with ETS as well as with a couple of school districts to develop the Read Basics assessment in partnership with developing the STARI intervention. And after a year of STARI, our students did show growth on the Read Basics assessment. Before I get into talking specifically about that, I just want to say that what I like about this assessment is that it is designed for students who read below grade level. I had not heard the term decoding threshold before today, although it's intuitive and makes a lot of sense. When I was in the classroom and when I was a literacy coach, we gave these interim assessments every 6 weeks. And, you know, I would have 7th graders that were reading on a 3rd and 4th grade level, and they would do terribly on the first interim assessment. And I would spend the next 6 weeks teaching them how to find the main idea. And at the end of 6 weeks, they would do terribly on the next interim assessment because the texts were written at a 7th grade level and they couldn't comprehend them. So what I really like about Read Basics is it is designed for those students who are reading below grade level, and those students who are reading below grade level are going to show growth in a short period of time on this assessment, because you can see exactly where they're struggling and where they need intervention. So with that said, there are 6 subtests on the Read Basics assessment, and the yellow bars here on this graph are the control students, the students who did not receive STARI, who were randomly assigned in our research study not to receive STARI, normed at the 50th percentile just for convenience of being able to understand the graph. The students in blue, this is the average STARI student. Across all of the STARI students, these are the blue scores. You can see that they outperformed the control students across all of the subtests of Read Ready. And the difference there between that yellow and blue bar is equivalent to about 1 to 1.5 years of growth. So the students in blue did 1 to 1.5 years, grew 1 to 1.5 years above and beyond the control students who didn't receive STARI. The red students are those students who completed the full STARI intervention, the full year of STARI. The teachers got through the 3 units that, you know, they're supposed to get through in a year. So you can see that those students did even better than the average STARI student, the student in blue, which shows not only that it really was STARI that was making the difference in their comprehension and other foundational reading skills, but also the importance of really making the time and space to get through the STARI curriculum instead of just sort of trying to squeeze it in really small snippets here and there in the schedule. One other point to make about this graph is that 70% of the control students received a literacy intervention, a reading intervention, and the other 30% received an alternative academic intervention. So, you know, we're not just looking at this graph saying STARI is better than nothing. STARI actually was better than the other interventions that schools had in place to offer those students who did not receive STARI. So what is it about STARI that makes it so great and so special? There are a few things that we think are different about STARI than a number of other reading interventions that you may be familiar with. And we call those things the 3 themes of STARI. The first is talk as a bridge to deeper understanding. This is an intervention that is based on student talk. Student talk about text is threaded into every single lesson. They discuss text in guided reading lessons, partner reading lessons. They discuss text as part of our fluency routine. There's also at least one debate within every unit. The next big theme of STARI is integrated building blocks of comprehension. So a lot of interventions really just focus on one component of reading and often have students practice that component of reading in an isolated way. In STARI, all the components of reading are integrated. So for example, I saw that a lot of you are assessing and intervening in fluency. Fluency is a big part of the STARI intervention. Our students have a 2-day fluency routine that they go through 10 times in a unit. They engage in repeated readings of leveled texts because that's the research-based way to improve fluency. But the topics for those texts are aligned with the unit themes. So by reading those texts, they're also building their background knowledge to help them comprehend the core unit novels. So that's just one of the ways that the components of reading are integrated within STARI. The third theme of STARI is student engagement and classroom culture. A lot of our middle school students who are reading below grade level have been experiencing failure for years and have disengaged with academics in a lot of ways, which is an appropriate response to repeated failure. No one likes to do things they're not good at doing. But we also know that middle school kids, if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. No matter how great the intervention is, if we don't engage kids and make them really want to participate, it's not going to be effective. So we have really engaging texts, engaging questions about those texts, and we give our STARI teachers a lot of support in creating a classroom culture where students' ideas can be heard. Briefly, logistics, what is STARI? So there are 3 series of materials. Each series consists of a full year's worth of curriculum materials. We generally recommend that series 1 is done with 6th grade, series 2 with 7th grade, and series 3 with 8th and 9th grade. There are 3 units within each series. Each unit consists of student workbooks and fluency passages, teacher lesson plans, and as well as the novels and nonfiction texts that the units are centered around. The curriculum materials can be downloaded free of charge on our website, or if you prefer, pre-printed materials can be purchased through a print-on-demand partner. The trade books, of course, are copyrighted and have to be purchased. We do have a book distributor that we partner with, and you can place orders through our website. These are generally pretty popular middle school novels, so you may, if you go digging around in your book room, be able to find some that your school already has. And before I close out, I want to leave you with some words from a STARI principal and some STARI students.
I believe that the STARI program has helped students in my school tremendously. We have a large group of students, especially in the middle school, that were performing 2 to 3 grade levels academically in English, and their vocabulary and their phonics-based instruction. And the program has really helped kids become confident. They feel like they're able to pronounce words or figure out what the meaning of the words are, which was able to help them become more confident in their English classes. The data that we've recently been able to review has shown that kids have moved 4 to 5 grade levels in STARI, just in the small amount of time that we have been able to implement the program. We are really excited, and it shows such promise that the kids are going to be able to use an intervention program that is geared towards them, that they're confident that they can do it, and they're seeing the results because they're doing well in their other classes. One girl in particular I remember started off at kindergarten level. I think she's now close to 3rd grade level. So that's significant. The kids are totally engaged the entire 35, 40 minutes that they are together.
Question. If she had power, why did she burn the money when Charles forced her to?
Because she, I remember in the text when it said she grabbed her hand and she basically made her do it because she wasn't going to do it if she didn't grab her hand.
Exactly.
But she was forced to. Or when she squeezed her shoulder because it hurt.
Did you hear what she said? Did you hear him? She made her do it. So that means Char has the power.
Because she grabbed her hand, she couldn't do anything. And she was weak.
Exactly.
Remember, one person is talking at a time.
Char has the power.
Excuse me, but you asked her a question and it was her time to speak and you speak over her. May you please let her talk, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
I respect that.
Yes, when she was grabbing her shoulder, she got weak. And she said she had a little bubble in her knee or something. Something happened to her knee. And then she grabbed her hand and she basically made her do it. She wouldn't have did it if she didn't grab her shoulder. So it wasn't really fair.
Okay. Is there another question?
No, but I do have a rebuttal. So what Tyshawn was saying, yes, Malika does have the power in this situation. Char has the power in this situation. What am I talking about? You wanna know why? Because Char forced her to do it, which means Char has the power because Malika didn't stand up for her stuff. What she did, she went in a corner and cried.
One person's talking. One more comment on this side.
The night time. Well, I remember before she burnt the money.
They are actively participating. They are excited. They don't get up and leave the room. They don't ask to go to the bathroom. They're not off task. Everybody wants to be there and is excited to get in there and get to the next piece. So it's just great to see. It really is great to see. And it's really hopeful that there is a program out there that's going to help kids grow.
So with that, I'll just close by saying that you may have some great data, but don't forget about what to do with it. Figure out how you're going to intervene to support your students. And if you think STARI may be the right fit for your school, visit our website to learn more about STARI.
And this spring, we'd like to offer you a pilot CAPTI at a 70% discount, or buy it for next school year and get the rest of this school year for free. Give us a call, email, we'll set you up and get you started the same day. And there's still time this school year to assess your students, focus your interventions, and measure the effectiveness of those interventions. Reach out to our sales director, Erica, and she'll be more than happy to do a detailed demo for you.